You're about to watch a recorded session from a live event brought to you by Lower Street, a podcast agency for brands. For more recordings like this or for information on other podcast events we have coming up, head to lowerstreet.co/events.
So video, 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 video. It's what's on everyone's mind in our fair industry. But rather than today debating about how video changes the very definition of a podcast, because maybe I'll speak for myself, but I think I'm speaking for everyone in saying we're a little bit tired of that debate. We're going to dive into the when, how, the why to transition a highly successful audio first podcast onto a video platform, and especially YouTube. Um, we released this week the Podcast Marketing Trends 2025 report based on insights from over 300 different podcasters, industry folks. And it talks a lot about the discussion we're going to have right now, notably lots of data on YouTube audience growth, suggesting that, and I think we know this, video is rapidly becoming a key ingredient in podcast growth. So for today's real world exploration, we're using Moneywise, one of our standout client projects here at Lower Street. We're going to dive into that case study from its audio only roots to a thriving video presence on YouTube, driving really impressive results, including over 200 conversions for Hampton, who is the client, and amassing almost 500,000 hours. That's about 55 years of listener engagement. That's across all platforms, not just YouTube. We're going to look at and discuss the real challenges and unexpected hurdles encountered when a top performing show like Moneywise goes from niche audio podcast and expands into video. That may look different for everyone. We're going to explain how we did it for this show. We're going to share what worked, where we failed miserably, and crucially, why. And it's a really important question to ask. So how does this help you today? Well, if you're planning this move to video, or just kind of curious about behind the scenes and the process, today we're going to talk about some practical insights and how you can begin that process or begin planning that process. The trend report, we'll drop that in the link as well. Stephen will go ahead and do that for us. We'll also include it in the replay email. That report is really thorough. It's beautiful online, so definitely check it out, share it around. Some good stuff in there. Joining us this afternoon to share the Moneywise video journey and all the insights that I just promised is Head of Special Projects and sometimes the secret host of Moneywise, Jackie Loneport. What's up, Jackie?
Okay, I was waiting for the cue of like when I could actually come in the room. Not much. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for joining us today. So Harry Morton, who's the Lower Street founder and also Moneywise host, and Jackie just gave this talk at the podcast show in London. But after that discussion, it was about an hour long, I think, right, Jackie? Uh, there was a lot of questions online to kind of do it again and cover off on some stuff that we maybe ran out of time during that chat. So,
Yeah.
uh, Jackie, super excited to have you today. I'm going to stay on because I plan to kind of fire some questions at you along the way as well. So, welcome and let's dive into this thing.
Awesome. I will just pop up my screen here. Cool. So yeah, we kind of, this is like the opening panel thing from the podcast shows. 150K downloads a month, audio wise to video, and there's a lot of metrics here, and there's some updated ones from the panel that we did in London, because we've had quite a bit of YouTube success since then. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But some of the assumptions that I made and some of the things that we were just trying out at that point have worked. So we'll talk more.
Cool.
Cool. Awesome. So first, I'll just like give you the briefest form of the context that you need to know, like, yeah, about Moneywise, what it is, what its purpose is, which, as you can see on the screen, it's just lead conversion, really. So Hampton is a community for high net worth founders. So we make a podcast about high net worth people, and we reveal a lot of finances, but it's also like primarily a lifestyle podcast. I feel like that's the pitch. I don't really need to say much more than that. If you listen, you know. If not, that's good enough. But the community, like I said, is for these people. So the point of the podcast is to make them aware that it exists and then convert them into paying members for Hampton. So at the end of the day, every single thing that we do, that's what matters the most. And that's why we did like such a like a high value like podcast, like audio wise. We really wanted to have something that was like elegant and like super produced, which made it interesting when we decided to branch out and try video, because the intention all along was just, let's just make this like a really awesome piece of audio. Nathan's,
Loving the
yeah,
new cover, by the way.
thank you. That's brand new. I just changed that out in the slide like 20 minutes ago. So that's brand new. Nathan said over 200. That's correct. These numbers are from March. They had 191 confirmed conversions, and that is like a conservative estimate too, because it's kind of difficult to track specifically. So they go like super conservative. So it works. So, like I said, we made it for this, like, to make this like really awesome piece of audio. We wanted it to be super produced. We kind of took inspiration from things like Masters of Scale, and then we started video. So why? And there's two reasons. One is just that Hampton wanted to try to see what they could do growth-wise on YouTube. It just thought it was an opportunity. Hampton, if you don't know, is owned by Sam Parr, who is the original host of this podcast, and he has seen a lot of success on YouTube with his other podcast, so he just wanted to see. And then Lower Street, we also just wanted to see. We wanted to try and see what happened and see how creative we can get without sacrificing the audio version. So it was really like an experimental thing, and that's been really interesting, and we've learned a lot, and it's a great opportunity because we wouldn't necessarily have been able to do it with other shows. But it's been super positive. So now I would say other shows should do it as well. First, I'm just gonna like set the stage of the story of the growth of the show overall. I have three things here: Apple, YouTube, and Spotify. Obviously, there's like, you could look at the distribution host, which is Transistor, by the way. You could look at other things, but this is also like Apple. You could choose plays. I'm choosing listeners per episode, and I'm using Spotify plays. I just podcast, the stats, podcast is an interesting place. So, but you can see here we have the launch, and what's interesting about the launch is we actually posted a audio only version on YouTube first, and then the point of that was it was a pilot, and we were just going to see how people reacted. So Hampton at that point hadn't actually ordered any other episodes, so we just dropped this pilot to see what would happen, and we got picked up on YouTube, and we got that first little spike. And so we said, okay, let's make some more episodes. So that's why you see that immediate drop right after that, because there was nothing else going out until this time, which is when we did like the real launch and we started consistently publishing. These dips that you see are just reruns. So that's, again, like we had first only ordered a season, and then there was like holidays. So we're still like figuring out, is this something that we want to continue to do? And at this point, it's all still audio. But we were seeing a lot of success, so they continued to do it. And then Sam started thinking long-term, didn't want to be a host long-term, so we started host experimenting. And that's when you see this next drop. And it kind of staggers a lot in this period. We lost a lot of like the Sam Parr mega fans who were just there for him, and that's totally okay because, again, they already know about Hampton. It's not really like that important for us to keep that audience around. Obviously, there's like, you could argue against that, but in general, I don't care that much. We get some more reruns, and then we get to the stable host, which is Harry, and now we've seen just consistency. So it hasn't really grown, but it also hasn't declined. You could see at the end, there's like some delayed data. So there's like a dip in the Apple one, just because Apple's a bit behind. But something that you can already see on the YouTube is a huge spike in the most recent end of that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But that's like the overall story of the show, and I'll also kind of break down when we started adding video, and you can see the difference after that point too. Overall, again, this is like, these are numbers from May, so this has probably gone up a couple 100,000, but about over 1.5 million downloads. If you're following Bumper, then you would agree that that is a useless stat. I recommend checking out Dan Meisner's content on why audio downloads suck. But for now, we still use this, so I can brag and say we have over 1.5 million. So cool. So let's like compare some stats. This isn't, we're not going to compare like audio to video. You kind of saw like most of what I'm going to share for audio. This is more comparing when we switched to posting video versions on YouTube as opposed to just the static image version, because we were already posting right from the beginning the static image version. And then we actually like evolved a little bit and did like some waveforms instead of just the image. But I want to show the difference between when we started posting videos versus that, and the performance that each have had on YouTube, each era. So we started with, again, the same way we did the pilot. We started with just one to see what would happen, and that was a video with Brian Johnson. So we were also banking on just like a name that would help bring in some traffic. And we got a nice spike. So you could see that that's where you get that first video spike, and then you can see where we start getting that consistent video. What's really interesting about the consistent video is that you can immediately see it's not actually that different stats from when we were getting like when we were just doing the audio only versions. But what you kind of, if you look a little closer, what's really, really interesting is just that the gaps in between, so between episodes getting posted, we're getting a little bit bigger. So we're getting new people in and they're watching other, or listening or watching other episodes as well. That's also just because like we have way more content now, so it's like easy for somebody to binge. But getting that like consistent push has like, it's helped not drop off completely in between episodes. So we're not completely relying on the cadence to actually get views in the channel. And then also just like people sticking around and watching more because they have the video version, as opposed to just getting that like core audience of people who were just watching the audio. Because this is like a thing with YouTube. It's like you can create a pretty consistent base and you get that same like those returning viewers every single week. And we had that, and it's kind of the same as the audio. We had a very consistent, stable number that we would typically hit for episodes, but we weren't able to really grow because after that episode is out and people have done that, they weren't coming back, or there wasn't anything else. They weren't new people. They were just there for the content and then bouncing. So we would have like this massive dips. So that's like, that's like the interesting thing. The other interesting thing is that YouTube does a cool thing where you can see the difference between engaged views and just regular views. Engaged views are literally, this is the description that YouTube gives, where it's just people who've watched past the first few seconds. And that goes up. And to me, that says that people are now clicking, realizing it's a video and staying, as opposed to clicking and realizing it's audio only and then just getting out of there.
Can we hang out on that for 1 second? Because I want to talk a little bit about how quality maybe plays into that.
Yeah.
So getting folks to hang out beyond those first initial seconds, I would imagine like really depends on if they're interested in, the quality of the show or the content of the show. Can you spend a little time on that?
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, okay, this kind of goes to like a much larger point of view that I have about YouTube and the value of YouTube for podcasters. And it's that YouTube really is people talk about it all the time. It's for discoverability. Like that's one of its biggest perks when you actually are able to put things out on YouTube. So YouTube will just like blast things out when they think that people are going to like it, and people will click on that. Your job is to get it to stay. So YouTube's job they'll blast it because it's in their favor. Your job is to get them to stay. Audio is like different because people are going there because it's intentional. Like they know the podcast mostly just again because of the behavior of the different platforms and discoverability. YouTube is more of like let's click around and see what I can find. So it becomes like way more important to make people stay because they're already in that mindset. So you can put things up on YouTube and it will push it out, but if they click in and it's just like this crappy Zoom call thing, which is like honestly like a lot of Moneywise does kind of look like a Zoom call. We've done some cool things with like borders and transitions and cut-ins and some like effects and stuff to make it look less like that. But there are podcasts out there that just look like you're watching a Zoom video. And a lot of people, as soon as you click in on that, you click out. So you want to make it feel like it's native. Like the people are on YouTube. You want them to feel like they're watching YouTube to stay. And I think you can make consistent stuff that is bad, and you'll get pushed out and you'll get clicks. But to get people to stay and to get that audience to grow, it needs to be like high quality. It's just like anything, right?
Cool.
I'll talk a little bit more about like how to get people to stay, because that's a very big thing, and we've made a lot of changes based on that. Cool. So let's talk about conversions. So like I said, YouTube is really, really great for just pushing your content out. But it's the same way that like the quality of the content actually matters to make people stay and to show YouTube that people are staying and they care about it and they like it and it's worth continuing to push. You need like good packaging to get them through in the first place. So all of you have to put a lot of effort across the board, but still effort that's worth it. Because I know that sounds like I'm saying, oh, it's not worth it. It is worth it, in my opinion, in most use cases. But yeah, those like thumbnails and your titles are so important, because you can see that YouTube will just blast things and you get a ton of impressions. The click-through rate is way less. This is just on like a random week in May for an episode that we had put out, and you can see that like the impressions are drastically different, but the actual conversion of people who click through to listen it's much like it's pretty close. Way higher percent on Spotify. And I'm just gonna continue to say this because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, from like just like the conversations that people have had about like being audio purists or just like going for video. I don't think that there's like a side to be chosen, although I think I'm on one. But YouTube will push to more people, and you will get more views and you will get more clicks. But that also means that there's going to be a lot of like an overwhelming amount that are probably not that valuable. But that doesn't mean that the YouTube audience isn't valuable. The YouTube audience can be way bigger. It's just a larger funnel. So you can get a lot of views, and if you can get like 10% of those people to care and to stay, then that's still worth it, because they're still, those 10% are just as valuable as the audio people. And the audio people, it's just like, it's easier because again, it's intentional. They're going to your podcast feed, they're subscribed to your podcast feed. That's the behavior on that platform. And so we kind of like, yeah, I think that we just think that the audio audience is more important. And I'll say this again as I get to the consumption rate and the average view duration. But this is like that 11,000 people that click through, like that's still valuable, even though 200,000 people saw it and didn't give a shit. But yeah, that's interesting. Packaging matters. More on the behaviors. This is just an aside that I thought was like really interesting. And it's more interesting now than when I did this presentation originally, like a month ago, because of the recent video that we've had take off. I really assumed that because the content is long, that people would watch it on their TV. I like primarily watch YouTube on TV. And apparently people are just watching it on mobile. So I do actually think that there are a ton of people out there who are just listening to it in their pockets and not even watching it. But we had a video that kind of shot off, and this is the first time that TV has actually played a significant player in the devices that people are using. That's pretty interesting to me.
I'm really interested to see how that moves and changes going forward too. I wonder if that's behavior we should watch.
Yeah, I was talking to I talk to a YouTube consultant every couple of weeks, and we kind of like analyze the data and look at the trends and what's working and what isn't. And we were talking about it today, and he said it's because the video that we made, it feels, the way that we did the video and even like the interview style, the way that we shot it, it looks like it feels like it belongs on YouTube. So you don't go to it and think, oh, this is a podcast. You go to it and it still feels like native to that platform. And that's really the key to getting people to stay. Even as YouTube like pushes podcasts, like you still want to be able to make it feel like it belongs on that platform, as opposed to just plopping it on and hoping that it'll do just as good as the audio. Yeah, that was really interesting. I'm very curious to see if that continues, or if we've like converted some people to TV viewers. But what's interesting is that was actually a shorter episode than usual too. Yeah. The other thing that's interesting, like I said, the audio listeners are way more intentional. They're following you. That means that they are coming back to you every single week. They want to listen to every single episode. That's just like you get that consistency, and you can see that in the stats too. It's like very much like this, whereas YouTube is like spike here, you know. The other interesting thing about that is like you don't have to rely on an algorithm to push it out, or those like first 24 hours of performance to be able to see if it's gonna be pushed or not. That behavior is built in, so the first 24 hours, like you don't have to, the packaging doesn't matter as much, the title doesn't matter as much. It's more just like it's gone to their feed, their whatever, if they have like a list of podcasts that they're going to listen to throughout the week, they're going to listen to it. And that's really interesting because like we don't get this like massive spike and then it goes down. We get that like pretty consistent, it's a little bit slower. Obviously you guys are probably familiar with audio stats, but it continues. So if you can see the first day of, this is an episode from May, the first day did close to, like, it was just a little over 9,000, whereas on average, it's about double that after 30 days. Whereas YouTube, if it doesn't get picked up after the first day, it pretty much dies. And again, like I said, this is just an interesting. Sorry?
How does cadence play into that and discoverability? Like if you are not releasing consistently, is that going to hurt your discoverability?
What's interesting, so it's not necessarily the same as like a podcast feed where it matters if you are consistently delivering like on a schedule. It's more like the more you post, the more opportunities you have to go viral or to have something pushed out. And then also like the more you're able to repackage or repost or get creative about what you're posting, the more opportunities you have to experiment to see what works. Because like one of the strategies on YouTube is just like keep going until something works and then replicate that. Obviously that's like a little different for podcasting, but yeah, it's like it's more just like the more opportunities you have to take off.
Cool.
Yeah, and then again, like this again just shows like the behavior. Like I said, people who are listening are subscribed. They're getting it because it's part of their routine, and the majority of people who are watching because it got pushed to them. We have a consistent base, and we can see that consistent base because when we put an episode out, we get that same amount of views, and then it drops. But for like when we get pushed, that's what matters to us, and that's why like so many of our views come from people who the consistent base doesn't even need to be subscribed, because the algorithm is doing like all the work nowadays too. It'll just push to you. And the other thing that's interesting about that is that you can't even rely on your subscribers to get your content if after that 24 hours it didn't do well. Harry we had an episode recently that didn't do that great, and he never showed up on his YouTube feed, and he's obviously subscribed to it and he's watched a bunch of them because he's the host and he used to watch them when Sam was doing it. But that episode didn't do well and it didn't show up on his feed even though he subscribed. So the subscribe status doesn't even actually matter as much anymore. It's not important, but it's also not as important as it was like 10 or 15 years ago.
Does this mean that we can finally stop saying follow wherever you get your podcasts?
Well, I mean, what's funny about that is like, I don't know, you're already there. So I guess it's the reminder to follow. I don't know, you can stop saying it. You can stop saying smash that subscribe button because I'm sick of that one. Get more creative. Cool. And then this, going back to my point again, this like bone that I have to pick about the hate on video. Comes back up here. The consumption rate. So this is AVD, stands for average view duration, and consumption rate, obviously ACR. People talk about this all the time. It's clear. It's obvious. These are our averages. On Apple, we have a 76% average. On YouTube, it's 26. So it's like drastically different. But as you saw with the follow status, and I've talked to you about like how that like discoverability aspect where people are there to discover. So they're clicking in, clicking out. All of those people that you're being exposed to, and then maybe they weren't the right audience, YouTube didn't find the right person, so they clicked away, they're bringing that average like way, way down. But it doesn't mean that the people who aren't like clicking away, like the people who are watching it doesn't mean that they're not watching all the way through. It just means that because it's a discoverability thing, it's gonna be a lower average, whereas Apple is like so intentional. People are going because they follow you, or it's in their routine. So I think we get like so caught up on view duration, and as like a metric to point to the fact that the YouTube audience doesn't matter as much. And I don't think that's correct. I think you just have to see it for what it is, which is I have the opportunity right now to reel people in, and I'm going to try to do that, or I'm just going to continue to do podcasts and hope that it grows other ways, or audio podcasts. Like I said, that because of that, like, people are clicking in, they're clicking away. That first 30 seconds on YouTube is like very, very, very important. And you can see that you're like dropping like crazy in that first 30 seconds because of those people, and then it starts to stabilize, and then you get that same kind of graph that you see in Spotify or Apple. It's just that like really, really slight drop, and then you have like some sort of call to action, and then people just completely drop off and then come back. But yeah, the once you get past that first minute or so, it does stabilize. But the first 30 seconds, to be able to keep them in, is important, because you want them to stay, because you want YouTube to know that the video is good. Whereas on Spotify or Apple, like, we don't have to get people's attention the same way, because they're there already. Which means we can be lazy, and not necessarily lazy, but we can be like uncreative. And I think that what's really interesting about trying to adapt to a platform that's a little bit different is that it's pushed me to think a little bit more about why I write intros the way I write them, or what's actually the most interesting. And is it interesting because this is the standard that I've been doing for like 10 years, or is it interesting because it's interesting the way that I'm writing it? So it's interesting. I really like the fact that it's pushing me out of my creative comfort zone, and not just taking it for granted that people are gonna stick and listen to a 2-minute long explanation of what the episode's about. That's not actually a good thing.
How that's organically happening. Just the platform is kind of pushing people there behaviorally. Up an important note for writers, producers, I think, as well, when you don't need to continually kind of explain the show that maybe your listeners are already pretty familiar with, and they don't need that. So you can just like dive directly in, and to your point, leave as quickly.
Yeah, that's actually okay. So we've changed the intro a lot, and I'm gonna go into how we've done that right here. But I'll just start by saying that I have changed the intro on both the podcast, like, audio version, and the video version, to match like what I've kind of learned and adapted to the video, from like being on YouTube. But I haven't done the same things across the board. So I've also changed the outros on YouTube to for reasons I'll explain in a moment. But I didn't put that in the audio version because I did think that would make the audio version worse. Creatively, I do think that the change in the intro has been better overall for the show. So I've kept that, and this is one of those things, is the intro of like this is what the show is. It's kind of like you don't need 30 seconds to minute, 2 minutes to be like, hey, welcome to this show. I'm this person, and this is what you're getting. Especially because like on audio, we've talked about it, you see it. It is people who are coming back because they have that behavior, and they're fans already. Where like YouTube is like, you could argue, is more important to put like, this is what you're watching. But then you don't. You just said this is what you're going to get out of this. Yeah, so we've dropped that. Like, not dropped it completely, we've just like really, really, really significantly reduced it. We've also like there's like a CTA, and we've moved that, so like because it's a branded show, it's for Hampton, instead of saying all the whole big plug for Hampton, which at one point Sam did one that was 6 minutes long, which was crazy. But we were doing it for about 2 or 3 minutes sometimes. I think I got it down to like a minute or two for Harry when I started when he started doing the hosting. But instead I just write in, this show is made for Hampton, the community for high net worth founders. We'll talk more about it in a bit. And then we've moved that to later, the full big plug, to later on in the show, once we have the people hooked. And also, if they're at that point, they're like a better listener, or like a better target for us anyway. So it makes more sense. They're already engaged. They care. We've shown them why the content is valuable already, as opposed to just putting it up front without proving anything. So that's why I've made some of the changes for the audio version too.
I want to kind of walk back my comment a little bit, just because I think it's important that the things we're finding on video, we get to experiment a bit, and you have a little bit of creative liberty with this show.
Yeah.
you really like in experimentation mode and kind of exercise the creative side,
Mhm.
not all findings on YouTube are applicable. And I think that's what I hear you saying to the audio side as well. Like this platform does not dictate how podcasting should be going forward, but
Yeah,
there are some things maybe that can be kind of crossed over.
totally. It's just kind of like how you adapt, I don't know, like a blog post for different platforms, whatever it is. Like you're writing the same thing and you'll keep some of the same things, and maybe you'll learn something because one platform, it makes more sense to do that. And then you're like, oh, I actually like that better. It's the same thing. It's just, but again, like, because it's pushing me to think differently, I'm thinking differently and I'm liking some of the things I'm thinking about. But yeah, not everything is across the board. There are changes I made that I haven't made to the audio version, which means there's like a separate edit, which is like minimal work, but it's like a little bit more work as opposed to just like taking the exact audio version. Sometimes even we'll make like jokes, or not even like jokes. I mean, sometimes I make jokes on my episodes, but sometimes we'll do things and it won't, we know it won't translate to audio because there's something in there. And so we take it out, that kind of stuff. We
I,
also don't want the audio listeners to feel like they're missing out on something.
For sure. And I think that's a really important point to highlight. I love in talking to you about this over the last few weeks. Like when we talk about the algorithm, it's like almost this entity, this like referee, where we don't have that same kind of concept on Spotify or an Apple Podcast. Like the algorithm as this sort of like force that's hovering over YouTube is definitely something that you play into.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like operating on deadlines where you work faster because you know you have a deadline. Or I don't, I do. And it's just like when you have like some constraints or something different, like you just work a little bit smarter, a little bit differently. And yeah, I don't, the algorithm kind of does that to you. It makes you think, need to solve some problems. And some of those solutions are creative solutions that are just interesting. Yeah. But yeah, I also like don't believe in just like adapting everything to maximize, you know, your potential in the algorithm. I wrote an very, very long essay on that, and then we reduced it a little bit, but it's still long, which is posted on the Pacific Content blog, because I truly don't believe that. This is interesting. Okay, so it's working. The intros are working. This is our most recent like video that went big. It was from 2 weeks ago now. This video, the intro, as you can see, like our average, this is the gray part is in, or the part in gray is like the typical. We're above that. We're also like bringing that average up because we've been doing this now for about a month or two. So it's like continuing to stay up. But that like intro average has been rising. 75% of people are still watching around the 30-second mark. And I just learned today from the YouTube consultant that that is awesome because large YouTube channels, as you can see, they average around 45 to 55%. And at that minute mark, they're averaging around like 30%, and we're averaging about 55% at the minute mark, which is like pretty crazy. And again, you can see that people stick around after that point. They slowly leave once they've got the information that they need, but for the most part, like it's not like this drastic drop the same way. The big drop you could see in the center is the Hampton CTA, which people just like skip because that's why you can see like when it spikes back up, it's just people skipping through. But yeah, this video has been up for 2 weeks and it's got picked up by the algorithm. So it's just like continuously being pushed out to new people. So originally this average view percentage was even higher. I think it was like 29 or 30%, but because it's being pushed out and YouTube's trying to figure out different audiences that it might like push it more to, it's getting it wrong a couple times and it gets it right a couple times. So it's very normal for that number to kind of dip down the more it starts to get pushed out. But again, that doesn't mean that there aren't a significant amount of people watching all the way through. It just means that YouTube is trying to push it so people can discover it and people are trying to see what they can discover. But yeah, that's and also something that I didn't talk about in the intro bit there, and I also didn't talk about this in London, is I've also experimented with doing things that are just like visually a little bit different, but have also just like added textural elements to the audio as well. So as you can see, I'm standing in front of a terminal entrance in the beginning of this video, and it was a video about private jets. So I went to the airport and I shot the intro there, and you can hear the sound effects, or like you can hear the atmosphere. I'm actually, that's my cell phone I'm recording with there, instead of like buying a lav mic. It worked fine. We also had our sound designer for the audio version. He added in some like plain overhead sound effects. So it created this like really cool atmosphere on both versions of the show. And that was just like a really cool intro. And that's the kind of stuff that we want to keep doing. And I have another really cool one coming for our yacht video. But that's the kind of stuff that I want everybody to experiment with, because it's just pushing podcasters outside of their comfort zones, and it's creating some pretty cool stuff. I remember listening to like Visitations, which is a podcast that Elijah Wood did, and he like interviewed like directors, and they would like record everything, like the classic like recording walking up to the car or opening the door or hearing the rain as they're walking into the person's house or something. And I loved that kind of stuff. And I think that we like really focus on like polished music and studio recordings, and this has made me like think more about like the atmosphere. And maybe that's just me, I'm sure like a ton of you are already doing that kind of stuff, but this got me back outside of a zone where I had been stuck in this like one way of doing things for a couple of years.
To be fair, you were already at the airport.
Yeah, I had to pick up my wife from the airport that morning. She had an overnight flight too, and so she got off the flight, and I said, "Can you hold the camera for a couple minutes before we go home?" It was like 9 a.m. She hadn't slept. Yeah, it just worked out. I already had to be there. This is also these are a couple of the videos before that one. As you can see, the average line of people sticking around or viewing is this gray one. It's a little harder to see here, but the blue, all of these videos, we did that adjusted intro, and we like have performed way better. And you'll also notice in the top two, there's a bit of an uptick at the end, and that's what we'll talk about in a moment, because that's also interesting. The CTA strategy. So again, like we're a branded podcast industry or agency, and so all of our podcasts have some sort of brand attached to them, and typically a CTA. And then this also applies to just like regular people, because you have CTAs regardless. But the strategy is different for audio and video. And what's cool about the video is there are new ways to take advantage of the platform to be able to do it a little bit differently. So for audio, we do that top mention. Video, we do that top mention, the same thing. We also have a built-in promo, which is it's like a built-in host-read ad for like Hampton for what it is. And we put that in, and that exists in both the audio and the video version. And we put that about halfway through. And that way we're getting like, it's actually usually about like a 15-minute markish. So we're getting the people who are staying to that point, they're committed. And then like before, there's like the slow decline of people once they've kind of, realized they've got enough out of the video. Then the audio side, we also have dynamic ads. So sometimes we'll throw in the Hampton dynamic ads as well if they haven't sold that spot, because Hampton also monetizes their podcast. And in the video, you'll see these images are just like little pop-ups. So we don't actually interrupt the show at all, but we have this little pop-up the same way you get those people who put the bell on. We just do it for Hampton, so you can do it the same way. But that way, yeah, we're not interrupting it. It doesn't do anything to the audio version at all. And we do that twice throughout the show, one for Hampton, and we actually do one for Lower Street as well. But yeah, and then the other thing, we keep the outro CTA for the audio version, but we do not do that at all for the video version. And like I said, I'll explain the outro in a moment. But we still do like at the end of the show, this is the wrap up. This is what we learned. Thank you so much for this person. If you want more of this, you can check this out. If you want Hampton, blah, blah, blah. We do that still for the audio. We do not for video. Video, one of the coolest things that I really like is being able to do pinned comments, because that means it doesn't matter how long people are listening or if they skip ahead. Every single person that clicks on that video is going to see the pinned top comment, and it's going to be the CTA, and it's going to be the link, so they can click directly to it too. So that's like, again, that's like just another way that YouTube, another advantage that YouTube has. So we've been doing that as well. That's auto playing, so I'm gonna press back and then go forward again. But the outro, I'll explain the outro. The reason it's different is because YouTube values session time more than like anything. That's what they push. And it doesn't even necessarily mean session watch time on your content. It's just session watch time. What that means is literally just how long somebody is sitting in front of their computer on or whatever device on YouTube. YouTube wants people to stay there, obviously. If your content is keeping people on their platform, then they will push your content more. That matters. So there's that's made us do two things. The you could see it in the audio consumption rate graphs as well, and you can really see it in the video too. As soon as people realize that something is ending, they are like, oh, I got it all. Okay, I'm out, right? And you get that nice tail that just like, or whatever, like, you know, a cliff. And we don't want that. We want people to continue, because that means that like, you know, the habit is like, okay, I'm done. I'll click out of this tab, or I'll, you know, go to the next thing. Oh, now I can finally get up and fold my laundry or whatever. We don't want people to get up and fold their laundry. We want them to be irresponsible. We want them to stay on YouTube. So the thing that we've done is we have taken away any signals that the episode is ending, and it kind of ends a little bit abrupt, and not in the way that the story hasn't come to an end. Like, as a storyteller, that's still very important to me. More just in a way where we're not doing the wrap up and all of those call to action things. So what we're actually doing is we want people to feel like there's still more that they need to learn. So instead of wrapping up and saying you got everything you needed, we'll say, this person was like really, really adamant that this is the way, but this other person said the complete opposite. So that actually might all be false. And if you want that take, you should click here. And then that's the end. And then they're like, oh shit, I gotta click there now. Or, you know, doesn't always have to be a contrary opinion. It can be like anything. Oh, this is like related. But that's like also a great way, because again, YouTube doesn't care if they stay on your content, but it's nice if they do. So it's keeping them there, and then also keeping them going to our videos as opposed to somebody else's. This is the outro example.
It's almost like you'd rather be funded by a VC guy, because then you just like walk.
As he admits, Adam is great at making money, but the rest of it, well, it doesn't come so naturally to him. But his spending is nothing compared to Don Berger. He is hurtling himself towards zero, and the craziest part is that that's the plan. You can click here to get that story.
So yeah, that's an example. And it's working. This is this is nicer because it's a little closer up, so you get to see that nice gray line. The average line, you see the dip, and in that video, that's gone. So we've kind of like completely got rid of that from our retention graphs, which is really, really cool. So the comments, this is just interesting because it's more about like the culture of every platform. And I think that this kind of goes back to, Nathan, you know, I talked about this just a little bit ago, but the not chasing the algorithm, it's the same thing. Like, you don't necessarily want to chase the comments, because it's just the way that platforms are. People behave differently on each one. YouTube can be a place where you get a lot of like people who are thinking that they're experts in content and telling you to do different things, or just like people who expect things that are like way more YouTube or what they're used to, and so they will comment and they'll say things, you know. And I think that the important thing is, if I was just a YouTuber, I'd probably listen a lot more to those comments, but because we're not, we still want the audio version, like that matters a lot to us. We're not going to change things based on that. And I think that that's been like a struggle that we've had, where it's like, how much do we take this feedback? Because the other thing is, like, it's actually really, really awesome to be able to get that interaction and that kind of engagement, because by the nature of like RSS, it kind of often feels like a one-way conversation. You just put something out there and you don't necessarily hear back unless you've like cultivated a community, which is like great, and you can do that, but it's like, it's an extra step as opposed to YouTube, where that's kind of built in. So you can get a lot of really, really, really great engagement, but it also means that you're gonna have to learn how to filter things. But it's also cool because we get, just to say this one more thing, it's also really cool because we get to see the people that if we're hitting the right people, if the people that are listening are actually the people we want, based on like they're being, you know, oh, this was relatable or whatnot in the comments. That's really interesting. Sorry.
So that's what I was gonna say, is I guess you get to kind of gauge when it is actual feedback or engagement with your core audience, and when it's just kind of snarky stuff that isn't really relevant, but someone's making a stupid point that they feel they need to make. When do you ignore it, and when do you listen? And is there a workflow around that, or is it just kind of, you know, piecemeal, take it as it comes?
Yeah, I think so. There's like, you could very well just like listen to every single thing. If there's like a consistent comment people are making. So the example here is that in Moneywise, because we were like so audio first when we started and we developed the format, we have like narration throughout a lot of it. We condense a lot of the story. We use the narration to pace. We use it to kind of like add something like some more like thought leadership and whatnot into it. Also helps to like just rearrange the story so it's like following the line that I'd like it to, as opposed to kind of how interviews can be a little bit all over the place. And so we get a lot of comments of people saying like, oh, we don't want the narration, just like stop cutting in, just like play the interview. And that's something that I think my assumption is because, you know, a lot of the people who are on YouTube who do that kind of stuff, like that's the style, like that's it. You just sit in front of a camera like a Joe Rogan or whatever. Our audience is 99% male, so I'm pretty sure that is up there for them. Whereas, yeah, the audio version, you expect a little bit more production. So for me, it's like, what is like creatively, what is my vision, and how do I keep true to that without giving in to the things that I actually don't want to do just because they're saying it. But when people say things, it makes like, it's the same thing as like how the algorithm adds constraint. Anytime you're confronted with an idea or something different, you naturally have to think a little bit different. So it can spark some different ideas, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm following exactly what they say. It can mean, oh, I do actually want to change this. Or it can mean, no, now I know more now why I do it this way than I did before, and I will not change. Which is pretty much what happened to me with the narration things. Like I was like, no, I get it. This is why I do it, and I'm not changing. So it's kind of just like, you still have to be guided by your creative vision, which is like, sounds like so artsy, but yeah.
So speaking of comments, we have tons of questions coming through. So I just want to do a quick time check. We have 10 minutes left.
Cool.
Is that it for the slides or?
Yeah, I had that nice QR code with, I can put that back up there maybe, with that article that I wrote about the algorithm.
I think one that keeps coming. Yeah, let's leave it up for a second.
Okay.
One that I saw come through a couple times. We mentioned the latest episode.
Yeah.
Of course, this presentation was put together before that dropped, and I think it's worth noting it's been one of the biggest episodes success-wise so far. Do you want to
it's like, it's the
101?
biggest.
Like why? What did you play with? What did you try? And then I do want to get to the Q&A because thank you everyone for dropping in questions
Yeah.
into the chat and the Q&A.
I'll kind of speed run that so that we can get to the Q&A. So basically, the episode is, we didn't do the same interview format that we always do. We did it about private jets, which was like a topic as opposed to an interview. So there still is an interview component. I think that just the format difference helped because it just felt like more YouTube. I also shot the interview with a side angle and a back angle instead of using my Zoom or like my webcam, so that it didn't feel like it was like an interview. It just felt like I was collecting information from somebody. And I opened that intro like on location, so there was just like a couple other elements there. And also just like, because when you don't need a guest to drive something, you can pick a topic that like works, or will work, or you'd be more confident in. And YouTube, it's like, it's beneficial to try to do that as opposed to relying on guests, because then it's like hit or miss whether or not you get something that's like, and I don't want to mislead people like clickbait wise, so I always like just stay true to what the actual episode's about. So I think it's just like, honestly, it's like the topic was interesting, the production style was felt more video native, and we had good packaging.
Cool. On the packaging front, a number of questions here. I know we lightly touched on it, but it's definitely a game that needs to be played on YouTube. Talk to me a little bit about it, the thumbnail, the decisions for some of these things. I spoke to a guy earlier this week he's been a YouTube creator for a long time. It's like more important to him than the actual video itself. Lay that out for me a bit.
I hear that a lot actually on YouTube, is that like people will spend days on their thumbnails and like do tons of tests and their titles and that. And it's like, you can do that. I would prefer to spend more time on the content than the packaging. But like it said, like it's really important. And if the whole point of you getting on YouTube is for you to be discovered, if you're putting a crap thumbnail on there, then it's actually not worth your time, because you could have the best video in the world, nobody's going to click on it, and YouTube will know that, and they're not going to push it. So thumbnail and title are important, and you should put like I think people in the report that we put out today on video, there was like a response that said that people were, I think it was like on average like 1 to 2 hours or something spending on thumbnails, and I think I personally make them right now, and we're going to try and change that process, but I'm the one making them. I think I spend like 3 to 4 hours minimum, and I do a bunch of different variations, and I do a bunch of different title and thumbnail text things. And I've also just like learned along the way what kind of works, what doesn't. Some quick tips: bright and short to read are great. If the yeah the like bright as in like make the person brighter, make the visual background brighter. Ours is kind of dark right now, so I've been like trying to brighten it up without losing our colors. The other thing is like you kind of want to signify that it's like still a podcast, because you want people to understand what the content is they're clicking on, and not click away right away. So I always like to have like a shot of the microphone in it. However, I don't get like that. That means I don't like to grab people's like pictures off the internet. I like to take stills from the thing and try to find facial expressions. Obviously, that doesn't create the greatest quality. I run those photos through AI to enhance them. And then I like layer them on top of each other so that it's still kind of, it doesn't get that uncanny look, but it also looks like higher quality than it is. But yeah, those are like some quick tips, but thumbnails, titles, very important.
I'm interested in how many technical questions. We must have some producers in the chat here, but I want to address some of them. So
Cool.
the workflow video to audio, how does it differ? I know it could be a 2-hour discussion on itself, but is there
Yeah.
any like quick tips, anything you've discovered in this process? Obviously, we have our post-production team that is working very
Yeah.
closely with you. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So for the actual like polished edit, we have some awesome video editors. So I don't do that as the producer. But I do everything in Descript, and to be honest, it hasn't changed much for me in terms of like cutting the episode up and moving things around, especially for Moneywise. Like, we haven't actually changed really anything about it. I could pretty much take any of the old episodes and turn them into audio, or turn them into video by just like replacing the file and sending it to the video editor. So from that like basic perspective, it's not that different because we use Descript. The thing that I want to continue to experiment with, and you will see if you watch that video that I did, the private jet one, is like I said, the alternate angles, and there's some lighting. I have lighting off to the side right now, so there's some other things that you need to think about to make it look different and to bring the quality on the video side. Did I die?
No, you're here.
Okay, you're frozen on my screen.
Like you're living, you're still living.
Okay, that's good because I almost said a swear. Yeah. So there's some extra steps in like pre-production that I think will add a lot of visual value that I would like to implement more. But I think as like a low lift, you can do it the way we're doing it for Moneywise, and from my workload, it doesn't really change that much at all.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's probably some content we should release here soon. Just some tips and tricks on how to stay creative in that process. I just love that like you guys are experimenting. We obviously have our processes, but like we still have that freedom to kind of try things, and we're
Yeah.
seeing what works and what doesn't work. And that's not to say like video is always a must for every show, but if it is a part of a show, or wants to become a part of a show, if you're planning for it to be, there's a lot of different things you can try without going fully all in. A couple
Yeah.
more minutes here. So one question on audience, which I think is really interesting. We lightly touched on it, but I want to address Neil's question here. So back to the slide with YouTube versus Spotify and click-through rate. Any sense of the overlap between YouTube and Spotify?
I don't believe there's overlap. I haven't seen there. The reason I don't believe that is because we haven't seen any dips at all. And we also don't post the video on Spotify, so those are audio listeners. So the reason that we don't is because we use dynamic ads, and it's not compatible yet. Obviously we want to. Spotify's pushing video, but that's a whole different thing. Yeah, and then the typical like feel that I get from other people who have turned their podcast like have an audio version is the same thing. It's like it hasn't actually changed the audio numbers at all. So the assumption is it's just a different audience. It's like a new audience.
You just mentioned something, a couple things interesting. We're not putting the video on Spotify. So are we
No.
only leveraging YouTube for video? And is that a strategic decision, or is that how we see, best
No,
prepare?
I think I would actually love to get it on Spotify as well. We need to figure out the ad stuff because we've sold ads. It's part of like a revenue plan. Like it's like there's things and they just don't do dynamic ads. So we would lose all of that. And we actually do have like a significant amount of our listenership on Spotify. So it would be we need to like do a cost benefit analysis. And if they opened up and they like allowed dynamic ads in the video version, then it would be we would do it immediately.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm leaving a bunch of questions stranded here, and I'm sorry, we're simply running out of time. But thank you guys for an awesome, engaging conversation. Jackie, thank you so much. I feel like we could stay on and keep discussing this for about another 2 hours.
I could talk way
Uh,
too much. So
So it's good
yeah.
for us to know. Maybe we continue this conversation, watch how it's kind of unfolding. Thank you for diving into some of the performance stats. Super helpful to see the data. Stephen just reminded me that while I said earlier we're going to put the trends report in the link in the chat here, we're actually going to link it in the replay just so we can package it up nice for you and it'll be there. Thank you guys for joining. We love this time each month. Join us next month. Again, this is a free event. But we really appreciate everyone taking the time. And if you have questions, comments, keep them coming. We're always looking at how to evolve this and make it most useful to the folks who join us here. So thank you again. We hope to see you next time. Jackie, always fun. We
Thank
will see
you.
you all soon.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.